Hi friends, I am Uday Sagar Kandpal and I welcome you back to yet another lecture on NCERT Class 7 History Chapter 4 with fact elaboration notes by Sagar Kandpal, and the name of the chapter is The Mughal Empire. So let's start. The entry of the Mughals to India. The Mughal Empire is conventionally said to have been founded in 1526 by Babur, a warrior chieftain from what today is known as Uzbekistan, who employed aid from the neighboring Safavid and Ottoman empires to defeat the Sultan of Delhi, Ibrahim Lodi, in the First Battle of Panipat and to often sweep down the plains of Upper India. The Mughal imperial structure in bold, however, is sometimes dated to 1600 to the rule of Babur's grandson Akbar. This imperial structure lasted until 1720, until shortly after the death of the last major emperor Aurangzeb, during whose reign the empire also achieved its maximum geographical extent. Reduced subsequently, especially during the East India Company rule in India, to the region in and around Old Delhi, the empire was formally dissolved by the British Raj after the Indian Rebellion of 1857. Although the Mughal Empire was created and sustained by the military warfare, it did not vigorously suppress the cultures and the people it came to rule. Rather, it equalized and placated them through a new administrative practices and diverse ruling elites, leading to a more efficient and centralized and standardized rule. The base of empire's collective wealth was agricultural tax instituted by the third Mughal emperor Akbar. These taxes, which amounted to well over half the output of the peasant cultivators, were paid in the well-regulated silver currency and caused peasants and artisans to enter larger markets. So the Mughal chronology. Titular name was Babur. The birth name was Zahiruddin Muhammad, and birth was 14 January 1483. Andijan. Reign was 20th April 1526 to 26 December 1530. Death was 26 December 1530, aged 47, and he founded the empire. Then came Humayun. The birth name was Nasiruddin Muhammad Humayun. The birth was 6 March 1508. The reign was 26 December 1530 to 17 May 1540, and 9 years, 4 months, 21 days, and 2nd February 1555 to 27 January 1556, and then the death was in 27 January 1556, aged 47. Humayun was overthrown in 1540 by Sher Shah Suri of the Suri dynasty, but returned to the throne in 1555 after the death of Islam Shah Suri, Sher Shah Suri's son and successor. Akbar-e-Alam Jalaluddin Muhammad. Birth was 14 October 1542. Reign was 27 January 1556 to 27 October 1605. 49 years, 9 months, and 0 days. And death was 27 October 1605, aged 63. Notes: his mother was Persian Hamida Banu Begum. Then came Jahangir Nuruddin Muhammad Salim. Was his birth name, and birth was 20th September 1569. Reign was 15 October 1605 to 8 October 1627. That's 21 years and 11 months, 23 days. Death 28 October 1627, aged 40. His mother was Rajput Princess Mariam Uz Zamani. Shahjahan Shahabuddin Muhammad Khurram, 5 January 1592 was birth. Reign was 8 November 1627 to 2 August 1658, 30 years and 8 months and 25 days. Death was 22nd January 1666, aged 74. His mother was Rajput Princess Jagat Gosani, built Taj Mahal. Alamgir 1. Muhyiddin Muhammad Aurangzeb was his name. 4 November 1618 was his birth date. Reign was 31 July 1658 to 3 March 1707. That's 48 years, 7 months, and 0 days. Death is 3 March 1707, aged 88. Notes: his mother was Persian Mumtaz Mahal. He was married to Safavid dynasty Princess Dilras Banu Begum. He established Islamic law throughout India. After his death, his younger son Azam Shah became a king for 1 year. Then the titular name Bahadur Shah. Birth name was Kutubuddin Muhammad Muazzam Shah Alam. Birth was 14 October 1643. Reign was 19 June 1707, 27 February 1712, 3 years 253 days. Death was 27 February 1712. That was aged 68. He made settlements with the Marathas, tranquilized the Rajputs, and became friendly with the Sikhs in Punjab. Jahandar Shah. Birth name was Muizzuddin Jahandar Shah Bahadur. Birth was 9 May 1661. Reign was 27 February 1712 to 11 February 1713. 0 years 50 days. And death was 12 February 1713. Aged 51. Highly influenced by the Grand Vizier Zulfikar Khan. Then was Farrukh Shiar. His name was also Farrukh Shiar. Birth was 20 August 1685. Then 11 January 1713 to 28 February 1719, 6 year 48 days of reign. Death on 29 April 1719, aged 33. Granted a farman to the East India Company in 1717, granting them duty-free trading rights for Bengal, strengthening their post on the east coast. The farman decreed helped British East India Company to import goods into Bengal without paying custom duty to the government. Rafiud Darzat. Rafiud Darzat was birth name was Rafiud Darzat. Birth was 30 November 1699. Reign was 28 February 6 June 1719. About 98 days of reign. Death was on 9 June 1719. Aged 19. Rise of the Sayyid brothers as power brokers. Then Shah Jahan II, Rafiud-Dowlah was his name. June 1696 was his birth. Reign was 6 June 1719 to 19 September 1719, about 105 days. Death on 19 September 1719, aged 23. Then was Muhammad Shah, Roshan Akhtar Bahadur, 17 August 1702, 27 September 1719 to 26 April 1748, about 28 years, 212 days of reign. Got rid of the Sayyid brothers, fought a long war with the Marathas, losing Deccan and Malwa in the process, suffered the invasion of Nadir Shah of Persia in 1739. He was the last emperor to possess the effective control over the empire. Then it was Ahmad Shah Bahadur. Ahmad Shah Bahadur was his name. Birth was 23 December 1725. Then reign was 26 April 1748 to 2 June 1754, 37 days. And he died on 1 January 1775 for aged 49. Mughal forces defeated by the Marathas at the Battle of Sikandrabad. Then was Alamgir II. His name was Azizuddin. His birth was on 6 June 1699 and reign was on 2 June 1754 to 29 November 1759. 5 years and 180 days. Then death was 9 November 1759, aged 60. Notes were domination of Vizier Imadud Mulk. Shah Jahan III, birth name Muhilul Millat. Birth was 1711. Reign 10 December 1759 to 10 October 1760, 282 days. Death on 1772, aged 61. Consolidation of power by Nawab of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. Then Shah Alam II, Ali Gohar was his name. 25 June 1728 was his birth. Reign was 10 October 1760 to 19 November 1806. 46 years and 330 days. 19 November 1806, he died at the age of 78, defeated in the Battle of Buxar. Muhammad Shah Bahadur Jahan IV, Bidar Bhakt was his name. 1749 was his birth year. 31 July 1788 to 2 October 1788, 63 days was his reign. And 1790 he died, aged 41. Enthroned as a puppet emperor by Rohilla Ghulam Qadir, followed the temporary overthrow of Shah Alam II. Akbar Shah II, Mirza Akbar was his name. 22nd April 1760 was his birth. 19 November 1896 to 28 September 1837, 30 years 321 days was his reign. 28 September 1837 he died, aged 77, titular figurehead under the British protection. Then was Bahadur Shah II. It was the last emperor. He was the last emperor of the Mughals. His full name was Abu Zafar Sirajuddin Muhammad Bahadur Shah Zafar. Birth was 24 October 1775. Reign was 28 September 1837 to 23 September 1857, 19 years, 360 days. His death was on 7 November 1862, aged 87. Notes: the last Mughal emperor deposed by the British and was exiled to Burma after the Indian Rebellion of 1857. So who were the Mughals? The Mughals were the descendants of the two great lineages of rulers. From their mother's side, they were the descendants of Genghis Khan, died 1270, the Mongol ruler who ruled the parts of China and Central Asia. And from the father side, they were the successors of Timur, died 1404, the ruler of Iran, Iraq and the modern-day Turkey. However, the Mughals did not like to be called as Mughal or Mongols. This was because the Genghis Khan's memory was linked with the massacres of numerous people. It was linked with the Uzbeks also, their Mongol competitor. Mughals, however, were proud of their Timurid ancestry, as the ancestor had captured the city of Delhi in 1398. The Mughals did not believe in the rule of primogeniture, where the eldest son is inherited in the father's estate. Instead, they followed the Mughal and Timurid custom of compulsory inheritance, or a division of the inheritance. Mughal military campaigns. The army of Mughal Empire was the force by which the Mughal emperors established their empire in the 15th century and expanded it to the greatest extent at the beginning of the 18th century. Although its origins, like the Mughal emperors, were in the cavalry-based armies of the Central Asia, its essential form and structure was established by the empire's third emperor Akbar. The army had no regimental structure, and the soldiers were not directly recruited by the emperor. Instead of individuals such as the nobles or local leaders would recruit their own troops, referred to as the mansab, and contribute them to the army. The Mughal originated in the Central Asia. Like many Central Asian armies, the Mughal emperor army was horse-oriented. The ranks and pay of the officers were based on the horses they retained. Babur's army was somewhat small and looked like an army of Afghan origin. Akbar restructured the army and introduced a new system called the Mansabdari system. Later emperors followed the system. The Mughal emperors maintained a small standing armies. The emperor's own troops were called as ahadis, and they were directly recruited by the Mughal emperor himself, mainly by the emperor's own blood relatives and tribesmen. They had their own payroll and paymaster and were better paid than the regular horsemen sewers. They were gentlemen soldiers, normally and administrative duties in the palace. They were also included in palace guards, the emperor's own bodyguards, shahiwalas, and the gatekeepers. They were better equipped and had own horses. The emperor also maintained a division of the foot soldiers and had its own artillery brigade. Akbar introduced his unique system. The Mughal army had no regimental structure. In this system, a military officer worked for a government who was responsible for recruiting and maintaining his quota on horsemen. His rank was based on the horsemen he provided, which ranged from 10, the lowest, up to 5,000. A prince had a rank of 25,000. This was called the Jat or the Sower system, and officer had to keep men and horses in the ratio of 1:2. The horses had to be carefully verified and branded, and the Arabian horses were preferred. The officer also had to maintain a quota of horses, elephants, and cart for transportation, as well as foot soldiers and artillery. Soldiers were given an option to pay either in the monthly annual payments or of Jagir, but many chose Jagir. The emperor also allocated Jagir for maintenance of the mansabs. The Mughal army had no real divisions, though it had four types of warriors: the cavalry, the infantry, the artillery, and the navy. The cavalry had a primary role and others were auxiliary. The cavalry was the most superior branch of the Mughal army. The horsemen, normally recruited by the Mansabdars, were high-class people and were better paid than the foot soldiers and artillerymen. They had to possess at least two of their own horses and good equipment. Normally, they used swords, lances, shields, and more rarely guns. Their armors were made up of steel or leather, and they wore the traditional dress of their tribes. The regular horsemen were called as Sower. Mughal cavalry also included elephants, normally used by the generals. They bore well ornamented and good armor. Mainly they were used for transportation, to carry heavy goods and heavy guns. Some of the Rajput Mansabdars provided camel cavalry also. They were the men from desert areas like Rajasthan. The infantry was recruited either by Mansabdars or by the emperor himself. The emperor's own infantry was called as Ahsam. They were normally ill-paid and ill-equipped and also lacked discipline. The group included the Bandukchi or the gun bearers, swordsmen, as well as servants and artisans. They used a wide variety of weapons like swords, shields, lances, clubs, pistols, rifles, muskets, etc. They normally had no armor. The artillery was an important branch of the Mughal army. It was used extensively by the Mughal rulers like Babur, who used it to establish the Mughal Sultanate in the Indian subcontinent. Mughal artillery consisted of heavy cannons, light artillery, grenade, and raketis. Heavy cannons were very expensive and heavy for transportation and had to be dragged by elephants into the battlefield. They were somewhat risky to be used in the battlefield since they exploded, sometimes killing the crew members. Light artillery was most useful in the battlefields. They were mainly made up of bronze and drawn by horses. This also included the swivel guns borne by camels. The navy was the weakest and the poorest branch of Mughal military. The empire did maintain warships, however they were relatively small. The fleet also consisted of transport ships. The navy's main duty was controlling piracy, but they were also used in war. Chela were slave soldiers in the Mughal army. As a the counterpoise of the mercenaries in the employ, over whom they had a very loose hold. Commanders were in the habit of getting together at the colonel of their force, a body personal dependents of the slaves who had no one to look except their master. Such troops were known by the Hindi name of Chela, a slave. They were fed, clothed, and lodged by the employer, and had mostly been brought up by and trained by him, and had no other home than a camp. They were recruited chiefly from children taken in war or brought from their parents during the times of famine. The great majority were of of Hindu origins, but all were made Mohammedans when received into the body of chelas. These chelas were the only troops on which the man could place entire reliance as being ready to follow his fortunes in the both foul and fair weather. The Mughal military campaigns. Babur was the first Mughal emperor, 1526 to 1530. He succeeded to the throne of Fargana in 1494 when he was only 12 years old. He was forced to leave his ancestral throne due to the invasion of another Mughal group, the Uzbeks. After the years of wandering, he seized Kabul in 1504. In 1526, he defeated the Sultan of Delhi, Ibrahim Lodi, at Panipat and captured Delhi and Agra. In the upcoming slides, we were chronologically talking about the military campaigns of various Mughal rulers. Babur's military campaign. Babur in 1526 to 1530. 1526, he defeated Ibrahim Lodi and the Afghan supporters at Panipat. 1527, defeated Rana Sanga, Rajput rulers and allies at Khana. 1528, defeated the Rajput at Chanderi, established the control over Agra and Delhi after his death. Then Humayun's military campaign. Humayun was the ruler between 1530 and 1540 and 1555 to 1556. In between there was Sher Shah Suri dynasty or the Suri dynasty who defeated Humayun, and Humayun had to run to Iran. Humayun divided the inheritance according to the will of his fathers. His brothers were each given a province. The ambitions of the brother Mirza Kamran weakened the Humayun's cause against Afghan competitors. Sher Khan defeated the Humayun at Chausa and Kannauj in 1540, forcing him to flee to Iran. In Iran, Humayun received help from Safavid Shah. He recaptured Delhi in 1555 but died next year after an accident in his building. Akbar's military campaign. Akbar in 1556 to 1605. Akbar was 13 years old when his father had died and he became the emperor. He was taken care of his regent by his regent Bairam Khan. In 1556, military campaigns were launched against the Suris and the other Afghans, against the neighboring kingdoms of Malwa and Gondwana, and suppressed the revolt of his half-brother Mirza Hakim and the Uzbeks. In 1568, Saudi capital of Chittor was seized, and in 1569, Ranthambore. In 1570 and 1585, military campaigns in the Gujarat was followed by the military campaigns in the east in Bihar, Bengal and Orissa. These campaigns were complicated by the 1579 to 1580 revolt in the support of Mirza Hakim. 1585-1605, expansion of Akbar's empire. Campaigns were launched in the northwest. Kandahar was seized from the Safavids. Kashmir was annexed, and also Kabul was after the death of Mirza Hakim. Campaigns in the Deccan started, and Berar, Khandesh and other parts of Ahmednagar were annexed. Jahangir, 1605 to 1627. The Sisodiya rulers of Mewar, Amar Singh accepted Mughal service. Less successful campaign against the Sikhs, Ahoms and Ahmednagar followed. Prince Khurram, his future emperor, rebelled. Efforts of Jahangir's wife Noor Jahan to suppress Khurram were unsuccessful. So this was Jahangir's military campaign. Then was Shahjahan's military campaign. Shahjahan from 1627 to 1658. Mughal campaigns contained in the Deccan under the Shahjahan. The Afghan noble Khan Jahan Lodi rebelled and was defeated. Campaigns were launched against Ahmednagar. The Bundelas were defeated and the Orissa seized. In the northwest, the campaign to seize the bulk from the Uzbeks were unsuccessful and Kandahar was lost to Safavids. In 1632, Ahmednagar was finally annexed and Bijapur forces sued for peace. 1657 to 1658, there were conflict over succession. Aurangzeb was victorious and three princes, including Dara Shikoh, was killed. Shah Jahan was imprisoned for the rest of his life in Agra. Aurangzeb's military campaign. Aurangzeb 1658 to 1707. In the northeast, the Ahoms were defeated in 1663 but rebelled again in 1680s. Campaigns in the northwest against the Yusufzai and the Sikhs were temporarily successful. Mughals' intervention in the succession and the internal politics of the Rathod Rajputs of Marwar led to the rebellion. Campaigns against the Maratha chieftain Shivaji was initially successful, but Aurangzeb insulted Shivaji, who escaped from Agra and declared himself an independent king and resumed the campaigns against the Mughals. Prince Akbar rebelled against the Aurangzeb and received support from the Marathas and Deccan Sultanate. He finally fled to Safavid Iran. After Akbar's rebellion, Aurangzeb sent armies against the Deccan Sultanates. Bijapur was annexed in 1685 and Golconda in 1687. From 1698, Aurangzeb personally managed the campaigns in the Deccan against the Marathas, who started guerrilla warfare. Aurangzeb also had to face a rebellion in the North India of the Sikhs, Jats and Satnamis, in the northeast of the Ahoms, and in succession the Deccan of the Marathas. His death was followed by a succession conflict. Mughal relations with other rulers. Mughal rulers campaigned constantly under rulers who refused to accept their authority, but the Mughals became powerful. As Mughal became powerful, Many other rulers also joined voluntarily. The Rajputs were a good example of this. Many of them married their daughters into the Mughal families and received high positions, but many resisted as well. The mother of Jahangir was Kachawa princess, daughter of Rajput ruler of Amber, the modern day Jaipur. The mother of Shah Jahan was a Rathod princess, daughter of the Rajput ruler of Marwar, Jodhpur. The Sisodia Rajputs of the Mewar refused to accept Mughal authority for a long time. Once defeated, however, they were honorably treated by the Mughals, given their lands back as assignments. The Watan Jagir, the careful balance between the defeating but not humiliating the appointments, enabled the Mughals to extend their influence over many kings and chieftains, but it was difficult to keep this balance all the time. Aurangzeb insulted Shivaji when he came to accept Mughal authority. Mansabdars and Jagirdars. The term Mansabdars referred to an individual who holds a mansab, meaning a position or rank. It was a grading system used by Mughals to fix the rank, salary, and military responsibilities. Ranks and salaries were determined by numerical values called jats. The higher the jats, the more prestigious was the noble's position in the court and the larger his salary. The Mansabdar's military responsibilities required him to maintain a specified number of savar or cavalrymen. The Mansabdar brought his cavalrymen for review, got them registered, their horses branded, and then received money to pay them as salary. Mansabdars received their salaries as revenue assignments called Jagirs, which were somewhat like the Iktas. But unlike Muktis, Mansabdars did not actually reside in the administer their Jagirs. They only had rights to revenue as the assignments which was collected for them. Their servants, Mansabdars themselves, served in some part of the country. By Aurangzeb's reign, this was no longer the case, and the actual revenue collected was often less than the granted sum. There were also huge increase in the number of Mansabdars, which meant a long wait before they received the Jagir. Zabt and Zamindars. The main source of income available to the Mughal rulers was tax on the produce of the peasantry. In the most places, peasants paid taxes through the rural elites, that is, the headman of the local chieftain. The Mughal were used one term, Zamindars, to describe all the intermediaries, whether they local headmen of the villages and powerful chieftains. Akbar, revenue minister Todarmal, carried out a careful survey of crop yields and prices and areas cultivated for a 10-year period, 1570 to 1580. On the basis of this data, tax was fixed on each crop in the cash. Each province was divided into revenue circles with its own schedules of revenue rates of individual crops. The revenue system was known as it was prevalent to those areas where Mughal administrators could survey the land. In some areas, the zamindars exercised a great deal of power. The exploitation by the Mughal administrators could drive them to rebellion. Sometimes zamindar and peasants of the same caste allied in the rebelling against Mughal authority. These peasants revolted challenged the stability of Mughal empire from the end of 17th century. Mughal books written on or during Mughal period. Ain-e Akbari or Ain-e Akbari written by Abul Fazl ibn Mubarak, Akbarnama written by Abu Fazl ibn Mubarak, commissioned by Akbar, Babarnama, autobiography of Babar, Chahar Gulshan written by Rai Chatar Mankhyat, Empire of the Mughal written by Alex Rutherford, The History of India is told by its own historians written by Henry Mears Eliot, the Kusalat ut Tawariq written by Susan Rai, The Last Mughal written by William Dalrymple, Masir al Umar written by Samsam ud Daula Dahal Shah Nawaz Khan, Muktanab al Lulab written by Kafi Khan, Muntakhab al Tawariq written by Abd al Qadir Badayuni, Padshahnama written by Abd al Hamid Lahori, Shahjahnama written by Inayat Khan, Turk-e Jahangiri written by the Jahangir. So a lot of books. In the coinage during the Mughal rule, the Mughals adopted and standardized the rupee, rupiah or silver, and dam copper currencies introduced by the Sur Emperor Shesha Suri during his brief rule. The currency was initially 48 dams to single rupee in the beginning of Akbar's reign. Therefore, it later became 38 dams to a rupee in the 1580s, with the dams value rising in the further in 17th century as a result of new industrial uses for copper, such as in the bronze cannons and brass utensils. The dam was initially the most common coin in the Akbar time before being replaced by the rupee as the most common coin in succeeding reigns. The dam's value was later worth to be 30 to a rupee towards the end of Jahangir's reign, and then 16 to a rupee by the 1660s. The Mughals minted coins with a high purity, never dropping below 96% and without the debasement until 1720s. Despite India having its own stocks of gold and silver, the Mughals produced the minimal gold of their own, but mostly minted coins from imported bullion as a result of empire's strong export-driven economy, with global demand for the agriculture and industrial products drawing a steady stream of precious metals into India. About 80% of the Mughals in India were imports were bullion, mostly silver, with the major sources of imported bullion including the New World and the Japan, which in turn imported large quantities of textiles and silk from the Bengal Subha province. The Indian economy was large and prosperous under the Mughal Empire. During the Mughal era, the gross domestic product of India in 1600 was estimated at 22% of the world economy, the second largest in the world, behind only Ming China but larger than Europe. In 1700, the GDP of Mughal had risen to 24% of the world economy, the largest in the world, larger than both Qing China and Western Europe. Mughal India was the world leader in manufacturing, producing about 25% of the world's industrial output. After the 18th century, India's GDP growth increased during the Mughal Empire, with the India's GDP having a faster growth rate during the Mughal era. During the 1500 years prior to Mughal era, Mughal India's economy had been described as a form of proto-industrialization like that of 18th century Western Europe prior to the Industrial Revolution. The Mughals were responsible for building an extensive road system, creating a uniform currency and unification of the country. The empires had an extensive road network which was vital to the economic infrastructure built by a public works department set by Mughals, which designed, constructed and maintained roads linking towns and cities across the empire, making trade easier to conduct. The main base of the empire's collective wealth was agricultural tax instituted by the third Mughal Emperor Akbar. These taxes, which amounted to well over half the output of the peasant cultivator, were paid in the well-regulated silver currency and caused peasants and artisans to enter large markets. Deen-e-Ilahi. Akbar was deeply interested in religious and philosophical matters. An Orthodox Muslim at the outset, he later came to be influenced by Sufi mysticism that was being preached in the country at that time and moved away from the orthodoxy, appointing to his court several talented people with liberal ideas including Abu Fazl Faizi and Birbal. In 1575, he built a hall called the Ibadat Khana, House of Worship, at Fatehpur Sikri, to which he invited theologians, mystics and selected courtiers renowned for their intellectual achievements and discussed matters of spirituality with him or them. These discussions initially restricted to Muslims, were acrimonious and resulted in participants shouting at or abusing at each other. Upset by this, Akbar opened the Ibadat Khana to people of all participants shouting at or abusing each other. Upset by this, Akbar opened the Ibadat Khana to people of all religions as well as atheists, resulting in the scope of the discussions broadening and extending even to the areas such as the validity of Quran and the nature of God. This shocked the Orthodox theologians who sought to discredit Akbar by circulating the rumors of his desire to forsake Islam. Akbar's effort to evolve a meeting point among the representatives of various religions was not very successful, as each of them attempted to assert the superiority of the respective religions by denouncing other religions. Meanwhile, the debates at the Ibadat Khana grew more acrimonious and contrary to their purpose of leading to a better understanding among religions, instead led to greater bitterness among them, resulting in the discontinuance of the debates by Akbar in 1582. However, his interaction with the various religious theologians had convinced him that despite their differences, all religions had several good practices which he sought to combine into a new religious movement known as Deen-e-Ilahi. Salim Chishti was a Sufi saint of Chishti order during the Mughal Empire in India. Thus, Mughal Emperor Akbar came to Chishti's home in secret to ask him to pray for a male heir to the throne. Chishti blessed Akbar, and soon the first of three sons was born to him. He named his first son Salim, later Emperor Jahangir, in the honor of Chishti. A daughter of Sheikh Salim Chishti was the foster mother of Emperor Jahangir. The emperor was deeply attached to his foster mother, as reflected in the Jahangirnama, and he was extremely close to her son Kutubuddin Khana Koka, who was made governor of Bengal. Chishti's tomb was originally built with the red sandstone but later converted into beautiful marble mausoleum. Salim Chishti's mazar is in the temple of the emperor's courtyard at Fatehpur Sikri, Uttar Pradesh, India. It's believed that by offering prayers at its mazar, whatever one wishes will be fulfilled. The Mughal monuments. Mughal architecture incorporates the Indian elements with Persian and Islamic elements. Some features common to the many buildings are the large bulbous onion domes, sometimes surrounded by four smaller domes, use of white marbles and red sandstones, use of delicate ornamentation work, including Pachinkari decorative work and Jali lattice screens. Monumental buildings surrounded by gardens on all sides, mosque with the large courtyards, Persian and Arabic calligraphic inscriptions, including the verses of Quran, large gateways leading up to the main building, Ivans of the 2 or 4 sides, use of decorative chhatris. Then the Mughal monuments during Akbar. Agra Fort. Agra Fort is a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Agra, Uttar Pradesh. The major part of the Agra Fort was built by Akbar from 1565 to 1574. The architecture of the fort clearly indicates the free adoption of the Rajput planning and construction. Humayun's tomb. Humayun's tomb is a tomb of Mughal Emperor Humayun in Delhi, India. The tomb was commissioned by the Humayun's first wife and chief consort, Empress Bega Begum, also known as Haji Begum, in 1569-70, and designed by Miraq Mirza Ghias and his son Sayyid Muhammad, Persian-made architects chosen by her. Fatehpur Sikri, Akbar's greatest architectural achievement was the construction of Fatehpur Sikri, his capital city near Agra, at a trade and Jain pilgrimage. The construction of the walled city was started in 1569 and completed in 1574. Tomb of Salim Chishti. The tomb of Salim Chishti is framed as one of the finest examples of Mughal architecture in India, built during the years 1580 to 1581. The tomb, built in 1571 in the corner of the mosque compound, is a square marble chamber with a veranda. The cenotaph had extensively designed lattice screen around it. It enshrines the burial place of the Sufi saint Salim Chishti, a descendant of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti of the Ajmer, who lived in a caravan on the ridge at Sikri. The mausoleum, constructed by Akbar as a mark of his respect for the Sufi saint who followed the birth to his son. Jahangir Begum Shahi Mosque. The Begum Shahi Mosque is an early 17th century mosque situated in the walled city of Lahore, Pakistan. The mosque was built between 1611 and 1614 during the reign of Mughal Emperor Jahangir in honor of his mother, and is the Lahore's earliest surviving example of Mughal era mosque. The mosque would later influence construction of the larger Wazir Khan Mosque a few decades later. Tomb Itimadud-Daulah. The Tomb Itimadud-Daulah Mausoleum is the city of Agra, is the Indian state of the Uttar Pradesh, often described as jewel box, sometimes called a Bacha Taj, as the tomb of Itimadud-Daulah is often regarded as a draft of the Taj Mahal. Shah Jahan. Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal, a World Heritage Site, was built between 1630 to 49 by the Emperor Shah Jahan in the memory of his wife Mumtaz Mahal. Its construction took 22 years and it required 22,000 laborers and 1,000 elephants at a cost of 32 million rupees, corresponding to US 827 millions in 2015. It's a large, while the marble structure standing on a square plinth of the and consists of a symmetrical building with Ivan, an arch-shaped doorway, topped by a large dome and finial. Wazir Khan Mosque. The Wazir Khan Mosque was commissioned during the reign of Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan in 1634 and completed in 1642. Considered to be the most ornately decorated Mughal era mosque, Wazir Khan Mosque is renowned for its intricate faience till uh, the tile work known as khashikari, and as well as its interior surface that almost entirely embellished with elaborate Mughal era frescoes. Shalimar Garden. It is Mughal garden complex located in Lahore, capital at Pakistani province of Punjab. The garden date from the period when the Mughal Empire was at its earliest aesthetic zenith. Construction of the gardens began in 1641 during the reign of Emperor Shah Jahan and was completed in 1642. In 1981, the Shalimar Garden was inscribed as UNESCO World Heritage Site as they embody Mughal garden design at the apogee of its development. Shah Jahan Mosque. The Shah Jahan Mosque is the central mosque for the city of Thatta in the Pakistani province of Sindh. The mosque, commissioned by Shah Jahan, who bestowed it to the city as a token of gratitude. Its style is heavily influenced by Central Asian Timurid architecture, which was introduced after Shah Jahan's campaigns near Balkh and Samarkand. The mosque is considered to have the most elaborate display of its work in tile work in South Asia. It is also notable for its geometric brickwork, a decorative element that is unusual for the Mughal period mosques. Shahi Hammam. Shahi Hammam is a Persian-style bath which was built in Lahore, Pakistan in 1635 CE during the reign of Emperor Shah Jahan. It was built by chief physician to the Mughal court, Ilam Uddin Ansari, who had been widely known as the Wazir Khan. The baths were built to serve as a waqf or endowment for maintenance of the Wazir Khan Mosque. Aurangzeb Badshahi Mosque. The Badshahi Mosque in Lahore, Pakistan was commissioned by the 6th Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb, constructed between 1671 and 1673. It was the largest mosque in the world upon the construction. It is the third largest mosque in Pakistan and the 7th largest mosque in the world. The mosque is adjacent to the Lahore Fort and the last in the series of congregational mosques in the red sandstone. The sandstone on the walls contrasts with the marble and the domes and subtle instar decoration. Aurangzeb's mosque architectural plan is similar to that of his father, Shah Jahan. The Jama Masjid in Delhi, though it's much larger, it's also functioning as Eidgah. The courtyard, which spreads over 276,000 feet, can accommodate 1,000 worshippers. 100,000 worshippers, 10,000 can be accommodated inside the mosque. Bibi Ka Maqbara. Bibi Ka Maqbara was a mausoleum built by Prince Azam Shah, son of Aurangzeb, in the late 17th century as loving tribute to his mother Dilras Bano Begum in Aurangabad, Maharashtra. It's a replica of Taj Mahal and was designed by Ataullah, the son of Ahmad Lahori, who was principal designer of the Taj Mahal. Later Mughals. Lal Bagh Fort. Lal Bagh Fort, also known as the Fort Aurangabad, a Mughal palace fortress at the Buriganga River in the southwest part of Dhaka, Bangladesh, whose construction started in 1678 during the reign of Aurangzeb's son Azam Shah, Sunehri Mosque. Sunehri Mosque is a late Mughal era mosque in the walled city of Lahore, Pakistan. Sunehri Mosque was built in 1753 when the empire was in decline during the reign of Muhammad Shah. Tomb of Safdarzang. The tomb of Safdarzang, completed in 1754, is one of the last examples of Mughal architecture. So we have talked about a lot of Mughal monuments like Agra Fort, Humayun Tomb, Fatehpur Sikri, Tomb of Shalim Chishti, Begum Shahi Mosque, Tomb of Itimad Dullah, Taj Mahal, Wazir Khan Mosque, Shalimar Garden, Shahjahan Mosque, Shahi Hammam, Badshahi Mosque, Bibi Ka Maqbara, Lal Bagh Fort, Sunehri Mosque, Tomb of Safdarjung. So thank you for watching my video. Hope you learned a lot for your competitive exams. Thank you for watching. Bye bye. Have a nice day.